shares, unissued shares. So let's get right into it. So in accordance with the directive of the Corporate Affairs Commission, all Nigerian companies must actually complete issuance of unissued shares or unallotted share capital nothing less than December 31st of 2022, and failure to do so by January 2023 will be considered as a breach of Regulation 13 that is outlined in the Companies Regulations of 2021. And then an extension was also given by the Corporate Affairs Commission. Before we go into the topic for today, I'm sure share capital, shares is not a new phrase or is not a new word for most of us. So most of us would have heard or would have come across shares or share capital in the process of incorporating our company. So shares is also known as stocks, as equity that represents your ownership in a particular company or in a company. So imagine you have 10% shares. That means that you have 10% ownership in that particular company. When your shares are in a company, or when the shares you have in a company, it means you own a portion of that company. So if you own 50%, means you own 50% or 50% portion of that company. Like an ownership is like a unit, share unit, monetary. Most people use most companies use shares to raise fund for their company. It helps them with business operations. So companies issue shares as a way to raise capital. When you own shares in a company, you become a shareholder. I'm sure we've heard shareholders, and shareholders are people who own shares in a company, which means you have a stake in a company, or you have a stake of ownership in that company. So some companies distribute dividends or profit at the end of the year. So when you have shares, or when you hold shares in a particular company, sometimes at the end of the year, financial year, some companies actually pay out when they make profit, and when they make loss, you also lose, but that's not what I'm here for. So at the end of the year, they pay profit or dividends to shareholders at the end of their financial year. So shareholders actually have rights. They often have rights to vote on certain company decisions, such as board meeting. You can vote, and you can also be voted for. So in some instances, if you check your MEMAT, which is the Memorandum and Articles of Association of that company you incorporated, you will see that you see a place where shareholders are listed as persons with significant control. Let me come again. You will see a place where shareholders are listed as persons with significant control, meaning they have control over the company. Like I said earlier, I said having shares in the company means you have a portion, or you possess ownership of that company. And then you can only be a person with significant control if you hold 5% of shares in that company, meaning you have to be present at meetings. They can't remove or appoint without you. They can't remove directors, appoint directors without you being present. You have to be present, meaning you are seen as an important body. How is that? So prior to the amendment of the Companies and Allied Matters Act, so companies do not need to allot all their shares. That was before CAMA 2020. So CAMA 1990 mandated companies to have minimum of 25% of the authorized share capital allotted. Not all companies could actually retain shares. Like when they are allotting shares, they have 1 million share capital. They can allot 75% and keep 25%, and then along the way they can then allot to people that are interested in acquiring shares in that company, and then they can actually do that without any adverse consequence, without penalties, without any implication. They can allot the remaining shares to people that are interested after they've incorporated the company. But if you remember, I stated earlier that share unit is a way of raising capital or funds for company operations, or the way you can actually run business or company operations. So, and then the new amendment, that's of CAMA 2020, CAMA 1990 was actually repealed, and new CAMA 2020 amended some of the laws. And one of the amendments that was raised was that all shares needed to be allotted, not 25%, not 25%, all shares needed to be allotted at the point of incorporation. So meaning at the point of incorporation, you have to allot all shares. You have to have like gotten shareholder. If you have 1 million share capital, all that 1 million share capital should be allotted at the point of incorporation. So unissued shares were no longer recognized by the framework or under the framework of CAMA, which is Company and Allied Matters Act 2020. And then I'm sure you're wondering, so what will happen to companies that were already in existence before the law? So an extension was actually granted that companies with unallotted shares should do the needful. So if you are a company then, now the story has changed. So if you're a company with unallotted shares, all you have to do is apply to CAC, and there was a period of grace where they could actually allot their shares to existing shareholders or to new shareholders. So an extension was granted to companies with unallotted shares by the CAC. So the CAC, in its publication that was dated April 26, 2021, granted an extension period for existing companies to issue all of their unallotted shares on issued share capital in compliance with Section 214, Section 124 of the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020, latest by 31st of December 2022. I'm sure I'm wondering, what if we didn't know? What? Don't worry, we are going into that part. So not complying with the Company and Allied Matters Act with CAC, the companies and officers will be liable for everyday default of 1,000 naira. That's for public companies, while for private companies 500 naira for private companies, and then 250 naira for small companies. So what they are saying is that where you have failed to comply with the regulations that CAC came up with, you were unable to allot shares during those extension period, period of grace, then you'll be liable to pay. The company will be charged for penalty, officers will be charged for penalty. So if you've been unable to allot shares for 1 year, let's calculate those the amount, 250 naira every day for a year. That's for the they are charging companies, they are charging officers of the company. So if you are adding everything together, that's the money you are owing Corporate Affairs Commission. You heard me. And I'm sure you're saying, I will not pay. If you want to do anything at the Corporate Affairs Commission, you'll be required to pay the penalty that you are owing. So pursuant to this directive, it is expected that all existing companies with unissued or unallotted shares proceed to issue their unallotted shares, meaning you have to allot your shares to existing shareholders or to new shareholders before or on the last day of December, that's 31st of December 2022, for you to avoid default penalties, which was like 2 years ago or 2 years ago, because we're in 2024. So any company with unissued share capital by 1st of January 2023, which was last year, is in violation of Regulation 13 of the Companies Regulation 2021, known as the regulations, made further to the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020, also known as the CAMA 2020. Then I'm sure you have questions like, so what will happen to companies with unissued shares? So existing companies with unissued shares can either issue out their unallotted shares to existing shareholders. Maybe a shareholder has 50% and you are holding 50%. You can allot the remaining 50% to the existing shareholders, or if someone is interested in acquiring shares in your company, you can allot the remaining 50% to the new shareholder, but you would have to pay the default penalty fee which is prescribed, or you forfeit that portion of your share capital that is unissued or that is unallotted. They may also your company may also allot unissued shares to new shareholders, like I said, and it could be existing shareholders. Issuing all allotted shares either as a bonus or rights issue or allotment to new shareholders is not the only option that is available to companies. It's not the only option available to you. So companies may also cancel their unissued shares, or they can also reduce share capital. Companies whose unissued shares have been recognized may actually create additional shares by increasing share capital. So if you know, I can't pay penalty, and then you've passed that extension, so your shares will actually be derecognized. So what can you do when it has been derecognized? You can actually apply to CAC to increase your share capital to tally with what you have. So if your 50% remaining unallotted shares has been derecognized, CAC do not recognize it anymore, you only have 500,000 instead of 1 million, you can apply to CAC to increase your share capital and then reallotment. But it's not better to do the right thing. So if you know that you fall in this category of people, we would advise you to do the right thing or reach out to a lawyer that can help you do the right thing. So in conclusion, companies are actually prohibited from holding unissued shares. Companies are expected to comply with the regulations by issuing out any unissued shares they might be holding after they've paid default penalties. And if you think, I don't have this money, because there was a client that reached out, told her, and then she said, she doesn't have this money, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that every day it keeps counting. Imagine 250 naira if you're that's a very small company. Every day, till you're ready to pay. So if they told you were to pay 100,000 before, it will like be double of that 100,000 because of the time, and it kept counting. So it's better you do the right thing now. And then any company that, if you don't wish to forfeit your unissued portion of maybe existing authorized share capital, you'll be liable for a daily default, that is not what you want. And then there's nothing like ignorance in law. Now that you've been told, it will be advisable you do the right thing. And you can also drop a comment in the comment section or if you want us to direct you or assist you with the following. And then let's not forget, registering our company or our business is not the only thing we can do for our business. And then I'm sure in this 2024 we had plans, but what I know is that in those plans and resolutions we wrote, most of us did not have legal compliance. If you are one of those people that did not have legal compliance, I would urge you to have legal compliance, because that's the only way. In fact, there's no how you can expand your business without legal compliance. So send us a DM if you want guidance or direction on what to do. And then do not forget to join us same time next week. And I still remain your host, Tomi Ogunleye. And do follow us on our social media platforms at Low Ascent, at Ascent Nominees on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, any social media platform will be there. Thank you for joining us.